Ahlan wa sahlan, manishma, and good proverbial day. Ben here for Bubbly Brewery, and I wanted to do a quick how does it work for a shisha pipe. In front of me I have the basic parts. I have le base, I have le downstem, I have the tray, I have a hose, and I have a bowl. A lot of times when people are smoking shisha for the first time, I'll hear the question, what is this? How does it work? And I give them a physics or an in-depth breakdown of how it works. So I figured I'd do the same for you guys and allow you guys the same courtesy. So essentially what ends up happening is, this is the downstem, right? From here, okay, you have one access. The important part to this is this chamber right here, okay? Water, everybody knows that water is filling up from the bottom, okay? And then you have a little bit of air, and then you have your pipe. And that's usually what people kind of figure, and that's where they kind of stop. So that's all really important, and the reason why is this. The whole way, from a physics point of view, that this works is that the downstem is going underneath the water. That downstem, aka this part, which is going to be about this far underneath the water, that is running through the entirety, the length of the downstem itself and up to your bowl. Alright, the bowl is going to be up here, for example, and you're going to have your coals on top. As you inhale, right, you are inhaling from this chamber. So when this is all said and done and it's sat down like this, there's a hole that your connector, your pipe is going to be feeding into. That comes down into the base here and is not in water. That's just in air. All right, and when you inhale, there is a vacuum that's created right here. It's one of the reasons that I always talk about these hoses in particular and how I like single pipe hoses, because I don't want that extra, leak essentially. This ball is a very important part, right? That ball sits right on top of here, and then this goes right here. And the reason that's important is because with the ball sitting there, it creates a vacuum. All right, and when you have a vacuum in here and you inhale, it's forcing it to inhale to intake air from some point, right? And when you're doing that, it's forcing it to intake air from the top here. So put that on there, put that on here. So it's going to be pulling air through the top of the foil into the coals. That's what's going to cause the coals to light up, become red hot, right? That's going to cause the baking process in the top. That smoke is going to trickle down through this downstem right here, all the way into the water. Now, a lot of people think that the water is a filtration system. I suppose crudely, yes, perhaps. But what's more important about the water is that it is a percolation system. The percolation system means that it's going to cool down the smoke. The reason that when you smoke a cigarette it's so harsh on your lungs is because the ignition source on that cigarette is attached to the cigarette. It's called a cherry. That cherry burns at between 700 and 900 degrees Celsius, something like that. That is extremely hot, and that's what causes the smoke to be harsh when you take it in, because it's a hot smoke. With shisha, the reason why shisha or hookah is so easy to inhale is because as that smoke is bubbling, right, it's being exposed to water. And that water is cooling down the smoke, right? It's decreasing the temperature of the smoke. And so when you inhale, it makes it a much more room temperature or body temperature smoke level, and that's what's so enjoyable about it. When you have an ice bowl, you're doing the same effect. You're putting ice around here, it's around that stem, so when you pull smoke through that stem, through the downstem, it's cooling all that smoke. Right? And so that's how it ends up cooling down the system here. So because you have the water here, because you have your downstem going through there, and you have the hose being plugged right in here, right? It requires air to come in because this is a vacuum, and that forces it to come in through the top once more. All right? Now the tray is useful pretty much for one reason and one reason only, and that is that the tray is going to end up holding coals or catching coals. So the idea is, when you have your bowl on here and you have your coals on the top, say something, heaven forbid, falls off, the idea is the tray is going to catch it. Or say, you have too much heat on there, you have too many coals, but you want to save a coal for later. Put one coal right there on the side, save it for later, and you're going to end up being able to use it in a little bit. So that's the idea for the catch and the guard, or the tray. And the tray is literally just a tray. It's there to hold the coals. One thing I will tell you guys is you can find a couple of different styles of pipe. Syrian or Egyptian style, typically. And the breakdown is this. So this would be an Egyptian style where you have this nice long female piece that's coming up that the male piece is going to go into from the hose. A Syrian style would be more like this guy, where you have just like a tiny little spout. This one is pretty big. This is a pipe that's made in America. It is modeled after a Syrian kind of idea, but you know, it's reasonably large on here because it's made in the States. But this, you know, is just a small down piece as opposed to this, which is big. And that's the big difference between, you know, Assyrian and Egyptian style when it comes to the down stem and that intake right there. So yeah, this also I hope gives you guys an idea of why I recommend and so vehemently recommend staying away from multiple hose pipes. Because kind of like what I was just saying, the whole operation of this is based is based upon the idea that you have a vacuum here. So if you have another hose right here, what are you adding? A hole. That's right. You're adding another hole into your pipe, and essentially that's just creating an air leak. So when you know, if you are smoking with people and you have a multiple hose pipe, proper smoking etiquette, right? If I'm not smoking, my side would be to put a thumb over the tip, so that the other person is not going to have, you know, any question about air coming in, anything like that. On some of the nicer multiple hose pipes, they'll even have a ball in here, much like the ball on the purge valve, and that ball will come up and down depending on, you know, who's smoking. But yes, it sounds like a good fix, but if you have two people smoking at the same time, they're still going to be competing over a drag source, and they're going to be, you know, fighting over that vacuum. So I definitely personally recommend single hose pipes, but there's a little bit of the why and the reason behind that. That should give you guys the basic breakdown on how a pipe works. And also should explain why, you know, some of the maintenance tips and tricks that we recommend here are so useful. So, keeping your coals spread out around the bowl, very useful. Making sure that, again, you're not trying to light the tobacco on fire, you're trying to bake the bowl nice and evenly, create nice even heat dispersal. That's very important. And that's because it's going to be, you know, coming through here down into your water. And that is the basic way a shisha works. This is Ben for Bubbly Brewery. Ciao for now.